First signs in the thin air. August 17th, 1943. 26,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The cold bites through wool and leather as if the aircraft skin is already gone. Frost feathers along the inside of the plexiglass, each vibration shaking loose a fine dust of ice that drifts through the fuselage like ash. The B-17F Iron Promise pushes forward in the combat box, for right cyclone engines hammering a rhythm that never quite lets you forget how thin the aluminum walls really are. Staff Sergeant Thomas Hale stands at the starboard waist gun, knees bent, boots braced wide on the metal floor. His oxygen mask hisses with every breath. The twin .50 caliber Brownings rest in their cradle, barrels black and scarred from earlier missions. Hale's gloved hands are already numb, but he does not shake them. He does not pace. He watches. Outside, the sky looks empty. Pale blue, almost gentle. That is what makes it dangerous. Below, the German countryside drifts past in fractured patterns of fields and rivers. Ahead, the bombers stretch into the distance, silver shapes stacked at staggered altitudes, each crew trusting the others to hold formation. Trust is a fragile thing at this height. One wrong move, and the whole box unravels. Hale leans closer to the window, ignoring the ache in his shoulders. He has learned not to scan wildly like he did on his first mission. No frantic sweeps. No chasing shadows. He fixes his eyes on specific slices of sky and lets everything else fade. A flicker catches his attention at 2 o'clock high. Not a silhouette, not a glint, just a subtle distortion, as if the air itself has been disturbed. He tightens his grip. Across the fuselage, the radio crackles with clipped voices. Somewhere forward, the pilot calls out minor course corrections. The aircraft shudders as flak bursts far below, black puffs blooming harmlessly short of the formation. Most gunners are waiting for shapes. Hale is waiting for intent. 3 missions ago, he realized something he could not put into words at first. Enemy fighters did not simply appear and attack. They prepared. They shifted. They aligned themselves in ways that left faint signatures long before the guns ever opened up. He watches the empty sky and notices a second disturbance, higher than the first. A tightening of spacing. A brief pause in relative motion. His pulse quickens. The training manual never mentioned this. Neither did the instructors back in England who taught him lead angles and burst discipline. Those lessons assumed you reacted after the enemy committed. Hale has started to understand that commitment itself leaves clues. The formation ahead of Iron Promise makes a slight correction to the left. Hale feels it through his boots before he sees it. The bombers tighten, metal wings nearly overlapping in perspective. Somewhere out there, German pilots are watching this too. The flicker sharpens into a faint cross of wings. Bandits, someone shouts over the intercom. 2 o'clock high. Multiple. Hale is already moving. He swings the guns upward, not toward the fighters themselves, but toward the space they're sliding into. He does not wait for the dive. He does not wait for the sun to flash on canopies. He presses the triggers. The Brownings roar to life, recoil punching through his arms and into his chest. Tracers arc outward, bright red threads stitching the air in a pattern that makes no sense to anyone watching from inside the aircraft, except to the men in the Messerschmitts. The fighters hesitate. It is a fraction of a second, but it is enough. Their formation wobbles, spacing disrupted. One peels away too early. Another banks hard, abandoning the attack line entirely. Hale, what the hell are you firing at? The tail gunner yells. Hale does not answer. He adjusts his aim, firing another controlled burst, walking the tracers through the empty space where the fighters would have been if they had stayed on course. Only now do the German aircraft commit, but they do it broken, individually, without the synchronized weight of a coordinated strike. Rounds snap past the fuselage. One slams into the bomber ahead, tearing a ragged hole in its wing. But the masthead on assault never materializes. The fighters scatter. As the sky clears, Hale eases off the triggers. The barrels smoke faintly in the thin air. His heart pounds against the oxygen hose. Inside the Iron Promise, no one says anything for several seconds. Hale keeps watching the sky. He knows this was not luck. It was not instinct either. It was pattern. And if there are patterns, they can be learned. He resets his stance, eyes searching again. The enemy will come back. They always do. This time, he intends to be ready before they decide to attack. Learning the language of movement. The sky does not stay empty for long. As the formation presses deeper toward Schweinfurt, the air grows crowded with expectation. Hale keeps his face close to the plexiglass, breath fogging the edge of his mask. Below, flak begins to rise in thicker columns, black bursts stepping upward like a staircase built for destruction. Each explosion rocks the bomber slightly off rhythm, forcing constant micro-corrections from the cockpit. Hale barely notices. He is replaying the moment in his head. Not the firing, not the recoil, the space before it, the way the air seemed to tighten, the way the fighters slid into position without yet revealing themselves. Across the fuselage, Sergeant Leo Martinez at the port waist gun gives him a long look. Martinez is older, already on his 10th mission, with the calm of someone who has seen enough to know what matters and what is not. "You were shooting ghosts," Martinez says finally, his voice flat through the intercom. Hale nods once. They weren't ghosts. Martinez snorts, but says nothing more. The radio crackles again. Reports of fighters circling wide. Escorts struggling to keep up. The mission grinds forward mile by mile. Minutes pass, or hours. Time stretches strangely at altitude. Then Hale sees it again. Not directly this time. It appears at the edge of his peripheral vision. A subtle symmetry forming where there should be chaos. Empty sky organizing itself. High at 1 o'clock, far beyond what most gunners would consider immediate threat, several specks adjust relative position. Not diving, not climbing, just aligning. Hale remembers his first mission, how he chased every movement, how his eyes jumped from shadow to shadow until exhaustion set in. That kind of watching is loud. This kind is quiet. He raises the guns slowly, deliberately, lining them not on the aircraft, but on the invisible lane those aircraft are creating. He waits, counting breaths. 1, 2, 3. The German fighters tip their noses downward. Hale fires. The burst is shorter this time. A warning more than an attack. Tracers streak through the space ahead of the formation like a drawn blade. The reaction is immediate. 2 fighters break left. One dives too steeply, overshooting the box entirely. Only a single aircraft continues its run, alone and exposed. The top turret gunner chews it apart before it can fire. Silence follows, broken only by the engines. Martinez's voice comes back over the intercom, quieter now. "How did you know?" Hale swallows. His throat is dry. "They have to line up," he says. Even chaos has rules. The words feel insufficient, but they are the closest he can get. As the bomber drifts onward, Hale begins to consciously catalog what he sees. Fighters that intend to attack head-on compress laterally, tightening wing spacing to maintain mutual cover. Those planning a high-speed pass hesitate just long enough to synchronize dive angles. Even the most aggressive pilots reveal themselves by impatience, creeping closer to the formation than necessary before committing. None of it is dramatic. All of it is readable. The flak thickens as they near the target. The sky becomes a minefield of smoke and shrapnel. Hale forces himself to split attention, tracking both the ground bursts and the distant fighters. He does not want to be surprised by either. The bomb bay doors open with a mechanical groan that vibrates through the airframe. Cold floods the fuselage. The bomber feels suddenly lighter, almost fragile. This is when the fighters usually come hardest. And they do. A dozen aircraft appear almost at once, fanning out from high and low angles. The intercom erupts with overlapping warnings. Turrets spin. Guns chatter. Hale does not panic. He watches how the fighters move around each other. Which ones jockey for position? Which ones hang back just a moment too long? He fires not at the loudest threat, but at the quietest. A cluster forming just above the nose of the bomber behind them. His tracers slice through the gathering point, forcing the entire group to scatter. The result ripples outward. Attacks lose timing. Angles become shallow. Firing windows shrink. The bombers release their payload. The aircraft lurches upward as thousands of pounds drop away. Far below, the target disappears in a smoke and flame. On the return leg, the enemy attacks grow weaker, less coordinated, more desperate. By the time the formation turns west, Hale's barrels are nearly spent, his arms shaking from fatigue. But his mind is sharper than it has ever been. Back at the airfield in England, as engines wind down and crews climb stiffly from their aircraft, Hale is pulled aside by Lieutenant Robert Ames, the squadron gunnery officer. Ames is young, but his eyes carry the weight of responsibility. "I got reports you were firing early," Ames says. Not accusing, curious. Hale meets his gaze. "Early for what they did," he replies. "Not early for what they were about to do." Ames studies him for a long moment. Then he nods slowly. "I want you in the briefing room tomorrow morning." As Hale walks toward the debriefing hut, boots crunching on the cold ground, he realizes something unsettling. If he can see these patterns now, others can too, which means the enemy will eventually try to hide them. The war in the air is changing, and Hale is no longer just reacting to it. He is learning to read it, turning intuition into doctrine. The briefing room smells of cigarette smoke and damp wool. A chalkboard dominates the front wall, already cluttered with half-erased diagrams of bomber boxes and approach vectors. Hale takes a seat near the back, arms folded, still feeling the vibration of engines in his bones. Lieutenant Ames stands at the front, helmet liner tucked under one arm. He taps the chalk once against the board, calling the room to order. "We lost 2 ships today," Ames begins. "Less than expected, more than we wanted." Eyes flick briefly toward Hale. Not accusing, measuring. Ames draws a rough outline of a bomber formation, then sketches several small triangles around it. Gunners reported something unusual. Early firing. Disruption before commitment. A low murmur ripples through the room. Hale feels heat creep up his neck. He did not come here looking for attention. In the air, decisions are solitary. On the ground, they belong to everyone. Ames turns. "Staff Sergeant Hale, tell them what you told me." All eyes settle on him. Hale stands slowly. The room feels smaller than the sky, more dangerous in its own way. He searches for words that will not sound like superstition. "They show intent before action," he says. "Fighters have to shape the air before they attack. They align. They hesitate. They move in ways that do not make sense unless you know what comes next." Someone snorts softly. Another shifts in his chair. A tail gunner speaks up. "You saying you can read minds now?" Hale shakes his head. "No, I'm saying they cannot help themselves. Physics makes them predictable. So does training." Ames steps in. What Sergeant Hale is describing matches multiple after-action reports. Attacks breaking up earlier than expected. Fighters aborting runs after minimal fire. The room grows quieter. Ames gestures toward the chalkboard. "Show us." Hale moves forward. His hands tremble slightly as he takes the chalk. He draws small marks, then lines connecting them. He explains spacing, angles, the way fighters slide laterally before diving. He does not dress it up. He keeps it simple. "Fire here," he says, marking an empty patch of sky. Not at them, at where they are trying to go. For the first time, heads begin to nod. The discussion runs long. Questions pile up. What about different fighter types? What about weather? What about inexperienced pilots who do not follow rules? Hale answers what he can, admits what he cannot. This is not a formula. It is a way of watching. By the end, Ames rubs his temples. "We're going to test this." The next mission comes 2 days later. September 6th, 1943. 25,000 feet above Stuttgart. The sky is harsher this time. Turbulence rattles the formation, making smooth observation harder. Hale braces himself, muscles already aching before contact. He knows the enemy will be different now. Reports indicate mixed formations, veterans flying alongside replacements. Unpredictable can be more dangerous than disciplined. As the bombers approach enemy airspace, Hale forces himself to slow down. Not every movement matters. Not every shape is a threat. At 10 o'clock high, a loose cluster of fighters drifts into view. They look sloppy. Uneven spacing. No clear lead. Hale ignores them. At 1 o'clock, far out, something else forms. Clean. Intentional. Hale calls it out over the intercom before anyone else sees it. Watch 1 o'clock high. They are setting. The top turret swings. The nose guns adjust. Hale fires first, a deliberate burst aimed through empty sky. Other gunners hesitate, then follow his lead. Tracers crisscross the approach lane. The effect is immediate. The enemy formation fractures. Two fighters collide in their turn, barely avoiding each other. The attack dissolves into isolated passes. A cheer breaks out over the intercom, quickly cut off by incoming flak. The mission grinds on. Attack after attack. Hale keeps watching patterns, calling out threats early. Not every prediction is perfect. Some fighters slip through. One bomber takes a hit to the radio compartment. Another limps along with a dead engine. But the formation holds. On the return flight, Ames visits the waist section. He grips the overhead support, leaning close so he can be heard over the engines. "You may have just rewritten how we teach this," Ames says. Hale shakes his head. "They will adapt." Ames nods. "So will we." Over the following weeks, Hale is pulled from normal rotation more often. He briefs new crews. He sits with gunnery instructors, translating instinct into language. Words like alignment and commitment become part of the vocabulary. Not everyone buys it. Some gunners cling to reaction. Others fire wildly, misunderstanding the idea and wasting ammunition. Hale learns quickly that insight without discipline is just noise. Then comes the mission that proves the danger of being right. October 14th, 1943. The second raid on Schweinfurt. The enemy knows them now. The fighters approach differently. Wider spacing. False alignments. Feints that look like commitment, but are not. Hale feels a chill deeper than the cold. The patterns are changing, which means the game has entered a new phase. And this time, prediction alone will not be enough. When the enemy learned to lie. October 14th, 1943. 26,500 feet above Schweinfurt again. The air feels heavier than it should at this altitude. Not from weather, but from memory. Hale recognizes the landscape below, even through broken cloud. Rivers bending the same way. Towns clustered like scars. He knows this sky. That knowledge does not comfort him. The formation pushes deeper than before. Fewer escorts. More silence on the radio. Almost immediately, the enemy announces himself in a new way. Fighters appear early. Too early. Loose groups drifting at range, deliberately visible. They slide into shapes that look familiar, almost textbook, then break apart for no reason at all. Hale narrows his eyes. This is wrong. They are fishing, he mutters, mostly to himself. At 2 o'clock high, a pair aligns cleanly. Hale raises his guns, ready to fire through the lane. Then they peel away. No attack. No follow-through. Moments later, another group mirrors the same behavior from 10 o'clock. Align. Pause. Break. A lesser gunner would chase them, burning ammunition and attention. Hale forces his hands to stay still. These are lies. Signals meant to trigger the response he taught others to make. The enemy has been listening. Flak begins to thicken, climbing higher than Hale has ever seen it. Bursts detonate close enough to rock the bomber violently. Shards rattle against the fuselage like thrown gravel. Through it all, the false patterns continue. Then Hale notices what is missing. There is no compression, no lateral tightening. The fighters are aligning vertically, stacking altitude instead of sliding sideways. A cold understanding settles in his chest. High 12, Hale snaps into the intercom. Not the ones you see. Watch above them. A second later, the real attack comes. From directly out of the sun, a tight formation drops straight down, engines screaming. No warning. No hesitation. No visible setup. Hale fires instantly, not where his instincts pull him, but where the dive must end. Tracers leap upward, intersecting the falling fighters. One aircraft disintegrates mid-dive. Another shears away, trailing smoke. But the rest punch through. Rounds tear through the bomber line. Plexiglass explodes inward. The aircraft ahead loses its nose entirely, vanishing in a flash of flame and debris. The intercom erupts with screams, in overlapping calls. Damage reports. Casualties. Hale keeps firing, adjusting, predicting not the beginning of attacks now, but their termination points, where speed and gravity will force the fighters to level out. The enemy adapts again. Shallow climbs, rolling breaks, attacks layered with flak bursts timed to disrupt aim. It becomes brutal, close, personal. A shell explodes just outside the waist window. The shockwave slams Hale backward, ripping his grip from the guns. For a moment, he cannot hear anything at all, just a high-pitched whine. He drags himself back up, vision swimming. Blood seeps into his glove from a cut above his eyebrow. He does not check how bad it is. He looks for patterns. They are harder now, subtler, buried beneath chaos. But they still exist. They have to. He spots at last. A hesitation not in the fighters, but in the flak. A brief lull as batteries shift aim. That gap lines up with a climbing group at 9 o'clock low. They are coming through the flak window, Hale shouts. 9 o'clock low. Count 5 seconds. He counts silently as he swings the guns. 5 seconds later, the fighters surge upward through the gap exactly as predicted. Every gun on that side opens at once. The attack collapses. The rest of the mission is survival. Bombs drop. Aircraft burn. Men die. But the formation does not break. On the return flight, Hale slumps against the fuselage, utterly spent. His hands shake uncontrollably now. Not from fear. From exhaustion. Martinez leans close. You saved us back there. Hale closes his eyes. They almost fooled me. But they did not. Hale says nothing. He knows how close it was. Back in England, the loss tally is grim. Schweinfurt bleeds them badly. The cost is undeniable. In the debrief, intelligence officers question Hale longer than usual. They want details, countermeasures, adaptations. Hale gives them everything he has, and then something he has not said out loud before. They are not hiding patterns, he tells them. They are creating false ones. You cannot just look harder. You have to look differently. The room is silent. That night, lying on his bunk, Hale stares at the ceiling. Every flicker of light looks like movement. Every sound like an engine. Prediction has become a duel, not of reflexes, but of deception. And the enemy is learning fast, seeing the attack before it exists. November 2nd, 1943, 24,000 feet above northern Germany. The cold is sharper now, winter pressing its way into every seam of the aircraft. Frost clings thickly to the waist windows, forcing Hale to scrape a small circle clear with the edge of his glove. Below, the land is pale and lifeless. Above, the sky feels watchful. This mission is different, not in target or altitude, but in mood. The crews are quieter. The bravado burned away over Schweinfurt. Everyone understands now that survival is not guaranteed by courage or firepower alone. Hale stands at his gun, posture looser than before, almost relaxed. He is not searching for fighters anymore. He is searching for imbalance. The enemy appears late. Too late. No distant probes. No obvious feints. That absence speaks louder than any movement. Hale's breathing slows. He lets his gaze widen, taking in the entire sky instead of focusing on points. He feels the formation around him through vibration and sound. He notices a slight change in engine pitch from the bomber to his left as it corrects course. Then he sees it. Not aircraft. Not motion. A hole. A region of sky the enemy should be occupying, but is not. A deliberate emptiness at 11 o'clock high, just offset from the sun. Hale does not raise his guns immediately. He waits. The enemy wants reaction, wants confirmation. The hole remains. They are already committed, Hale says quietly into the intercom. They just have not shown themselves yet. No one questions him now. He swings the guns toward the empty space and fires a long, steady burst directly into nothing. For a heartbeat, there is no response. Then the sky erupts. Fighters explode out of the sun glare, their attack line torn apart before it fully forms. One clips another's wing in the scramble. A third rolls inverted too late, flying straight through a wall of tracers. The attack never coheres. Other gunners follow Hale's lead instinctively, firing into approach lanes instead of chasing silhouettes. The bomber box becomes a moving barrier of denial, not a reactive target. The enemy breaks off faster than Hale has ever seen. As the formation continues, the realization settles in his chest with unexpected weight. He is no longer predicting attacks. He is preventing them from existing in the first place. The rest of the mission passes with scatter resistance. Dangerous, but unfocused. The enemy cannot find rhythm against a defense that refuses to play the expected role. When the bombers turn for home, sunlight finally clears the frost from the windows. The sky looks almost peaceful again. Back at the airfield, Hale climbs down from the aircraft slowly. His knees protest. His hands ache as if the guns are still there. Lieutenant Ames meets him on the tarmac. He does not speak at first. He simply offers Hale a cigarette. Hale takes it, though he rarely smokes. His hands are steadier when they are holding something. "You know this will spread," Ames says finally. "Training manuals. Gunnery schools. Every waist gunner from here to Italy will be told to do what you do." Hale exhales a thin stream of smoke. "Then they will change again." Ames nods. "And we will keep changing with them." Weeks later, Hale is rotated off combat status. Too many missions. Too much strain. He spends his days teaching, drawing diagrams on chalkboards, watching young gunners struggle to see what he now cannot unsee. Some never get it. Some do. Months later, the war in the air shifts again. Longer range escorts. New tactics. New aircraft. But among the gunners who survive long enough, a quiet rule takes hold. Do not wait for the enemy to attack. Watch the sky until it tells you what the enemy is thinking. Long after the war ends, Hale will struggle to explain what he did. There are no equations for it. No simple drills. Only the memory of a moment when empty air stopped being empty. When prediction became survival.